my name is Amanda Herzog. I'm the founder of Intertalents in Sweden, and there I offer online courses, ebooks, career coaching, a lot of other resources, including free resources that help foreign-born professionals to find career success in Sweden. You can learn more about it at the website www.intertalentsinSweden.com. You can also find this link in the description and details of this event. And just a little bit more information about how this LinkedIn Live event is going to work. So everything we discussed today will be in English. And anyone who is a listener, you can join and leave at any time. So if you can't stay the whole time, that's fine. You can come back in later. There won't be any disruption at all. So it's a very casual podcast style type of event, easy listening. You can, cook your dinner at the same time, drive home from work, all those types of things. This will also be recorded and put on the Intertalents in Sweden YouTube channel in about a week or so you can catch the rest of it later. We also have a Q&A, a live Q&A available at the second half of this event. So if you have a very specific question for Caroline or myself, you can just, wait at the end. And what we'll do is you essentially put your hand up and it puts you in a queue. So everyone who wants to ask a question, you will be put into a queue and we'll answer them in consecutive order. And something that is very specific to this event is that we created a Google form where you could send in your very specific questions for Caroline. So we're going to be answering some of those as well right before we open the live Q&A. So if you sent in one of those questions, just hang around to the second half and you'll probably get your answer. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce Caroline and bring her on. Caroline Sandqvist is an experienced Swedish HR professional. She was also a previous recruiter. She has extensive experience in recruitment and coaching leaders as well as employees. Today, she's going to be sharing her very interesting knowledge with us because we get to take a look behind the curtain and find out what really happens on the company side of recruiting in HR practices in Sweden. I'm super excited about this personally. I think everyone here is as well. So yeah, Caroline, go ahead and give us an introduction to who you are.
Cool. Thank you very much, Amanda. And hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. As you know by now, I'm Caroline. Today, I'm an HR business partner, but I do have an extensive experience in recruitment. So I started my recruiting career about 10 years back and have then moved over to HR generalist role. I have been relocating international talent into Sweden, so I do have those experiences as well. And since I moved over to more HR business partnering, I've been driving organizational changes from the HR and people perspective. I've been coaching managers and their teams in everything from performance management and into development plans. And of course, in business, sometimes you do have disagreements and pure conflicts, and the role of an HRBP is sometimes to get your head in and mediate in those situations as well. I am working as an HRBP today, and I do represent companies, but my value of the HRBP role is that it's a balance of pushing the company agenda, but from the people perspective. No business, no people, but on the other hand, no people, no business. So it's definitely a two-way street that I'm working from here. But today we're here to talk about applying for jobs and how to advance the recruitment process as international talent in Sweden. I just want to put a small disclaimer on this, that the things that we're going to talk about today isn't true for all organizations or all recruiters, but very much of what we are going to talk about today comes down to basics that you can consider no matter what job you're applying for or advancing in your career. And as I have connected with Amanda, I have started to offering some coaching services when it comes to interviewing coaching and reviewing your CV etc. And in connection to this event, we will have a 20% discount on all of my coaching sessions and packages. And the discount code is coaching20. Was that correct, Amanda?
I believe it's coaching 72, but you can find it in the details
coaching
section.
72? Oh, yeah, perfect. Coaching 72. The code will be valid for 72 hours. You need to make the purchase within the 72 hours, but you don't have to book a session within the 72 hours, so you can save it for later.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving us this introduction and this really special offer. And again, if anyone is looking for the details of this, we do have it written in the detail section of the event. So just head over there or message either of us, we'll send it to you. And again, as we mentioned at the beginning of this event, there was a form and a link that we included as well in the details section of this event where you could send in your very specific questions for us to answer. So if you didn't have a chance to send in your question, we're going to give you the opportunity just to ask live here at the end, the second half of the event, where you can join the queue. And Caroline had a chance to look through these questions, and I just want to ask you directly, like, did you find any sort of red thread from the submitted questions that people sent in?
Yeah, lots of great questions, and many of them are connecting to understanding what a recruiter is looking for in your application and how to stand out from the crowd. And we've also got one very interesting question about consequences of not bringing on the international talent. So we're going to talk about that one as well. So some of the questions that have been submitted, I'm hoping to cover during the conversation here today. But in addition, we will also talk about the agenda that we pre-posted. So that's easy pitfalls when we're structuring a CV, ensuring that the recruiter understands your competence, the desire to impress in interviews, how you storytell in interviews, and then also how do you follow up with a recruiter when they go silent after an interview.
Really good. And I think we should just go ahead and start immediately with the first topic, which is easy pitfalls to avoid when you're structuring a CV. And as someone who is a career coach myself, I think there are some of the same pitfalls that many people are sort of repeating without knowing it. So I'm just wanting to know, what is your best advice in this area? What are you seeing most commonly?
Yes, I've seen thousands of CVs in my days, and if I could only mention one thing, it is make sure that your CV is easy to read. I know that a lot of people have got the advice to make the CV as short as possible, but what you then might do to yourself is that you're missing out on any relevant information, and instead you're resulting in big chunks of text, and you squeeze them in together to have like a one-pager, and you put in multiple columns. And in that situation, me as a recruiter, I sometimes don't even know where to start. So there's a balance between having a short CV with the risk that you don't display enough of information and the recruiter don't understand your responsibility or achievements, and a long CV where you don't understand what's been the most central parts that you've worked with. Me personally, I don't mind a 3-page CV as long as I can easily read it and the information is relevant. So then I'm going to play the devil's advocate on me. So what does relevant mean? What information in a CV is relevant? So this may depend on your industry or your profession, but if we take a software developer as an example, you've most likely had exposure to loads of technologies, but how many of them do you really have to mention? Limit to the most central technologies that you have worked with, and maybe not all 20 of them in every single role. If you have had extensive exposure to a lot of technologies, divide them up into projects, and then it will be easier to understand when you have worked with what technologies.
Yeah. I actually want to add a note to that because this is something that I'm teaching a lot when I'm posting on LinkedIn or to some of my coaching clients that I have. But essentially what I tell people is make yourself a specialist. And what this means is you cannot include every single thing that you've ever done on your CV. It just becomes too much. But you bring up a really important point is to just include what's relevant. Like, for example, you could either tailor it to a job, or something I like to recommend is tailor your CV and the jobs will come to you if you're a specialist. So that means, like you said, if you have 20 different technologies that you worked with, but only 10 are related to the role that you want or the type of industry you want to work in, just leave out the others, because then all it does is it sort of clutters the mind of the recruiter who's reading through this. You're confusing them, you're pulling them in all of these different directions. But if you give them a red thread or something that's common to follow throughout, you really elevate yourself as a specialist in that area. Is that sort of the idea that you're talking about here?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And of course, it's great that you have a diversity when it comes to different technologies. But as you say, you're most likely going to get hired for what you know, not for what you've just slightly touched. And if you want to work with a specific technology or a specific tool, make sure you learn it. If you don't have an opportunity to learn it in your job, make sure to learn it outside of your job and then display that in your CV so you can sell it in a better way so you're suited for that position. But relevant information, what is it that you actually can contribute to in this role?
Mm-hmm. And
there's another, go ahead.
Oh, continue.
I wanted to go over a little bit to gradings. I see a lot of gradings, and this might sometimes be in also technology, but I know it is very common in design profiles that you grade yourself out of design tools, etc. And gradings are very subjective. I've seen a lot of newly graduate students that are grading themselves 5 out of 5 using a certain tool, and my question right back is, okay, who you're comparing yourself to? Are you comparing yourself to your classmates that you just went to school with, or are you comparing yourself to a senior designer? How relevant is it to grade yourself 5 out of 5? So if you're grading yourself, make sure that you the recruiter understands who you're comparing yourself to. And also, grading is like so closely connected to your personality. Some people are super optimistic about their own capabilities, whilst others are really like self-critical, and they're even better than their own grading that they have put on paper. So it doesn't always portray that like objective picture of what you can actually do. Me personally, it's enough to see a list of the most central tools and knowledge, and don't grade yourself on them, because it just opens up for more questions, and you're going to get the questions in the interview anyway of how knowledgeable you are.
That actually makes me think of something else, because a lot of people will also grade their level of language skills. Would you say that this falls in the same category with like tools versus a language? I know they have language tests and so on, but how would you say people can express that as well?
I'm going to be super honest. If someone comes to me and they say I'm a B2 or C1 level of Swedish, I wouldn't even know what that means. So I know there's all those scales with SFE and all of that. If you have, very few recruiters are actually going to know what this means. It's better to say Swedish proficient or basic knowledge. For the positions, we're going to come into this later on, of positions that requires Swedish. If they 100% require Swedish, it is good for you to show that you're fluent or similar. But when it comes to the specific grading and then your grade in the Swedish language, then no, most recruiters won't even know what the grading means.
Yeah, I'm actually
sounds really hard.
Yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs up here. I just want to know, everyone who's listening, do you find this kind of advice relevant from the recruiter side? Like, I mean, this is a question I probably would have wanted to ask a recruiter like back in the day. Yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs up here because, I mean, we might know what that means, but I think if you're Swedish, you might not even know how SFE is graded. You just kind of maybe know that it exists. So I think that's really relevant, super practical advice you just gave us. Don't put what level you're at, but really focus more on like beginner, intermediate, fluent, something that's like a really common, easy way for no matter who is reading it to really get like a basic understanding. And then if they take you further on in the process, you can tell them, okay, it's C1, or here's my certificate, here's what it means, and you can explain verbally and so on. So,
yeah, 100%. Another thing that I would recommend when you're structuring your CV is to give the high-level overview of your responsibility and what your role has been. I like bullet points. It's so straightforward. You can touch on the most central topics and your project work. People tend to forget to talk about results and the influence you've had in your role and the impact of delivering a certain project or being part of changing a strategy, etc. So try to incorporate the actual achievements a bit more. And another thing that just makes a CV easier to read is clear titles, both your role and the company name. Have sufficient spacing. I mean, it doesn't have to be half a page long, but don't cramp everything together. If it's a bit of air in between, that's just good. It's much easier to read.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in agreement when it comes to, I think a lot of people list, they tend to list the tasks at the job. It almost reads like a job ad rather than a CV. So at this role, let's say, for example, they did administration, organized files and answered the phone. Okay, well, how many phone calls actually were you managing per day, for example? Can you quantify it in some way? Or did you improve an internal process? Did you create a brand new filing system or a digital system? And what was the outcome of that? Did you reduce calls because people can now book online? So I think, that's just kind of an extension of what you're talking about here. And I definitely tell people, try to include one or two things that you can quantify, because it also makes you seem more credible. You're not just saying, okay, I did this, but you're giving, and you can confirm this if this is true in your opinion. But what I always say is it can show a recruiter, hiring manager, hey, if they did that there, maybe they're capable of doing that here. Now I can see exactly, what they can improve this by X%, rather than, okay, well, there's tons of other people who can, organize, but this person looks like they're next level at organizing, and that's what I want. Would you say that's true?
Exactly. That's so spot on. And it doesn't have to be for the most advanced position, or if you're a manager and you have worked with a hard data for a very long time. It can be the receptionist role. It can be the office manager role, where you have negotiated contracts and you have decreased costs by this just because you did that. Or we reorganized this in the office and the office environment got this much better, etc., etc. It's it doesn't matter what position you have, you will always find something that you can quantify and put that on the CV, and people will having an easier time to connect your results to what you can do for them.
Exactly. And if there's anyone listening and you need help learning how to quantify, I mean, even if it's been a while since you were at that job, not everything needs to be a exact percentage, but you can reach out to me or Caroline, and in a private message, and we'll see if we can help you figure out how exactly you can quantify it, even if it's been a while since you've been at that job. But if we go ahead and just summarize some of the advice that you are giving about structuring a CV, you basically said that we should have bullet points, which I definitely agree with. Sometimes I think it's okay to summarize with like a very short sentence or two, but bullet points is so much easier to read. Also to specify what was your responsibility. If you had any influence at the previous role that you had, can you quantify it in some way? So important, and it definitely makes you look more competitive. So if there's anything that I would take as my favorite piece of advice, it would be that one. And again, if you have any sort of achievements, and on a more practical level, you said that we should use sufficient spacing, which I definitely agree as well. As someone with a marketing background, we're always taught that you should have a lot of white space. So a lot of like empty space around the thing you want them to see, because what it does is it draws their attention to certain areas more, meaning, the text in your CV. You can definitely play around with highlighting job titles and so on. And also, if you have any sort of hard skills that you can add, like software programs that specific technologies, tools, make sure that you can summarize this as well. And when you're grading yourself, try to be realistic and be a bit careful in how you're evaluating yourself. So your last piece of advice with that was just include the software and the tools. You don't even need to grade it. Let that come later on in an interview, or let them figure out how they're going to assess it.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And I know we've received a couple of questions, how to write personal letters that sticks out, etc. And I'd go back to showing achievements and showing results. I just want to do a big sigh when I hear personal letters. I'm not a fan. You will see the information that you need in the CV, but I do realize that they still exist. But the advice is to just look at the very top skills that they have listed at the very top list of the job advertisement, because those are going to be the most central that they are looking for you to match into. You can consider that when you're looking at your CV. Am I selling myself in a good way here to the very top skills that they are looking for? And then stress that even more in that personal letter. And then it doesn't have to be super long. If you have found anything on their website or anything like that where you can connect an opinion to their value or stuff like that, just shows them that you have put in a little bit more research into their brand and their company, and you can connect on another level than just the role. And I think that is it when it comes to CV and structuring a personal letter. So I think we can close the first agenda point of how to structuring a CV, and just want to take the opportunity again to remind you of the 20% discount code with the code coaching72. If you feel that you want an extra help to look over your CV, or if you want to do any type of interview training as well. We'll then move on to specifically interviewing, and we'll talk about making sure someone outside of your profession understands what you do, the desire to impress, and how to storytell. And the first one, making sure someone outside of your profession understands what you do, is important, because most likely you're going to have your very first call with a recruiter that has nothing to do with your type of profession. I wouldn't necessarily understand any code, or for you as a marketing person or a communication person, those platforms or different buzzwords or design tools, I won't know any of these. I will know what to look for because of the job advertisement, but I won't understand anything deeper. So you need to make sure that they understand what you have been responsible for and the impact that you've made in your role. So if we're going to take an example, if you're a UX designer for an online shop, you might say that you were responsible for a project of implementing new categories to the website and how the users explores them. So when a user logs into the app, you get the homepage, and then your job is to see how the user navigates further from here and what is the most user-friendly way. If you then can back this up by implementing the new categories, etc., and after the redesign of the user experience, or maybe you change the color of a button to get more purchases, you did saw an increase of 10% in sales in relation to the same amount of traffic that you had at the website. So then the recruiter knows, like, okay, you as a UX designer, you were part of this project. I can relate to the online shop because most people have done some kind of online shopping these days, and you can relate to what it does, and you make it very simple for them to understand. So have that balance of, like, think like you're talking to a child, but not with a child voice or the feeling that you're patting them on the head.
Yeah, can I actually add a point to this? Because I do think it's a balancing act. I mean, this is something that I'm usually teaching to my coaching clients that I have who need help with their CV. And I think it's important to show that you are knowledgeable in the industry that you work in. But it's good that you're clarifying this even for me on the recruiter side, because I'm very clear. I have never been a recruiter. I have actually been a part of some interview processes, but not directly as a recruiter, but I've talked to a lot of other recruiters and HR professionals, and you've had experience in this area. But I think the most important thing is to show that, number one, you actually know the industry and you're not just guessing or pretending to get a role, but you also need to show that you're capable of performing into what level. So when you have your example of, okay, I increased sales on the website by 10% working in this UX role, and these are the tools that I used. On the other side of this, we don't always know what level of knowledge that the recruiter or hiring manager is going to have about this position. And it's like, maybe sometimes it's somebody directly from the team who's like a UX manager of a team who might know a lot about this, or it could be a recruiter who usually brings the person in and then hands them over to a hiring manager. So do you have any quick advice about how people can kind of sort through exactly how detailed or how general they should be even in an interview? Because what if the recruiter doesn't know, but the hiring manager is actually testing their level of knowledge of how deep they actually know about it? Oh, I don't think, we can't hear you somehow. Yeah, you might need to refresh. 1 second, everyone. Okay, I think you're back. Well, just bear with us, everybody. I think she's restarting her audio on her side. But yeah, if you guys are listening, can you just give some kind of like thumbs up or symbol? I mean, have you thought about this as well? About like exactly how much, how much should we show that we know? Yeah. Oh, I see a lot of thumbs up here and so on. We're just waiting for Caroline I think she's grabbing another headset. So I'll just continue the conversation while she gets that set up. But my guess of what advice that she'll probably give on this, or the advice that I would give on this particular topic, is, yeah, try to find out what stage you are in the recruiting process. Usually in the beginning, a recruiter will contact candidates and get them through the first initial stage. And after they get a little bit further along, they'll bring in a final pool of candidates, and that's when you might get closer to a hiring manager who wants to know these details. Okay, Let's test it.
Let's test. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Perfect. The lovely boyfriend came to assistance.
Oh, great. Perfect. We're waiting on your answer.
Perfect. So what I was going to say is that most likely the first interview, it is the recruiter, and they are not going to know as in depth. So for them, it's relevant to understand what you have worked and what impact. And then they're going to ask you which tools you have used, and you can mention it, but don't go into the technical details. When you move on to the next interview that is going to be with a hiring manager, they're going to know a lot more details, and they're going to want to dig deeper in terms of what areas of the tool, or how have you worked with this technology, etc., etc. So it's two separate interviews. The first, light-hearted, more overview. You will mention the tools, but no other technicalities. Whilst the second interview is going to be more digging deeper, and they were going to test your knowledge a lot more.
Okay, yeah, that's quite clear. And while you were gone for a minute or so, that's kind of what I told everyone is, I said, if I could guess what her answer is going to be, it's going to be this, and that's what it sounds like it is. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic.
Cool. So next we have the desire to impress, and I find this very interesting because I saw your post, Amanda, about, was it the Chinese culture where it's the norm to make an impression that you're not a threat to the managers or the hierarchy?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. I don't think I've experienced that type. So I have more like, I just want to say yes to everything. I can do everything. And then I'll figure it out as I go. And you haven't done any mistakes, or you don't mention any particularly favorite areas, because you can work with anything within your profession. And like, to be honest here, no one here loves all parts of their jobs. Do we? Is there anyone here in this room that absolutely loves
raise your hand now.
Job?
One person. There's one person. I don't know if I see any more. Okay, well, I'm happy for you.
Two people love every part of
I'm happy
job.
for you guys.
I would love if I loved every part of my job. But I think what I want to say here is, like, when you go into an interview and they're asking you about a challenging question about what you did wrong or what you could have done better, etc., show on that self-reflection. They want to see that you have reflected over past mistakes, and more importantly, what you learned from them. Because it's not about, I'm perfect, I'm not making any mistakes. Everyone will make mistakes. But what did you learn from them that you're now applying in your role today, or what will you bring with you to the next role? And if you're not able to give them anything, there's a risk that they will ask themselves, like, okay, where's the self-reflection here? Do we want a besserwisser on our team? Would you like a besserwisser on your team?
I don't know what that is, actually.
Manager?
What does that mean? I've never heard that word.
So a besserwisser is like, I know it all and I'm never in the wrong.
I learned a new word. Is that like a Swedish word?
I was just going to say, is that a Swedish expression?
I think it is. I've never even seen it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, would you want to have a teammate that just knows it all and never makes any mistakes? I mean, that's not very, very humble, is it? So they want to see the part from you that you like to challenge yourself and you like to grow. And also, in my opinion, you want to work in a company where it's okay to make mistakes, because that's how we grow, and that's how we dare to experiment with different types of solutions to evolve both the business and ourselves. So never be afraid of talking about mistakes and what you learned from them.
So is this sort of like a little bit of a trick question from a recruiter to see like how open-minded you are to growth rather than the actual mistake that you made?
Yes, I would say it's not about the mistake in particular.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what you took away from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone, take that note.
Cool. We're going to move on to storytelling. This one has personally helped me a lot. I used it a lot like 4 years ago when I was looking for a job the last time. So remember this following phrase: STAR. STAR. S is for situation, T is for task, A is for action, and R for result. I'm going to repeat: STAR, situation, task, action, and result. Situation stands for that you start with describing a situation and the background. Think about who, what, when, where, and why. Who, what, when, where, and why. As you move along in your storytelling, you go to task. When you have described the background, you tell what you had to do to solve or reach success in that situation. And then you move on to actions. So you summarize what actions you took to complete the tasks. And then you explain what results you got from the actions. You can also Google this and you will get a summary, STAR, and then you will be able to get summaries of this as well. For me, it has helped because it provides me focus in the message that I want to tell. I can swirl into 10 different side tracks along the way, etc., and then you don't follow a red thread, etc. So we're just going to take an example here.
I think we're having another technical issue. I don't think we can hear you. Everyone just hold tight. She can hear me. We can't hear her. But she's fixing it. Just a moment. I think it's so common for technical issues to happen during speaking event or, anything that requires something digital. I think these in my experience, I'm usually expecting them at some point. So, yeah, we'll just give her another minute. I think you're back.
Anything now?
Yes, now you're back.
I'm back?
Yes.
Woohoo!
It cut off like
Great
right
success.
before you were starting your example.
Okay, perfect. So let's go on with the example. So me as an HRBP, I had a really tough conflict about the working environment between a manager and the team member. And the team member felt too micromanaged. This was a behavior that we had got feedback on previously, but without support from any team member to enter a feedback conversation. To solve the situation, we needed to understand the expectations more clearly and make the manager aware of the behavior, and we wanted to create more transparency to enhance the trust between the two of them. To do this, we started with a briefing conversation where the employee, in the presence of HR, explained the feelings, and the manager got an opportunity to respond. And HR was there purely as a facilitator and enabling both parties to get heard. In the beginning, it was a bit hard for the manager to take on the feedback, but after 5-6 meetings, we had reached a point where they shared a similar outcome of how to work together in the future. This was implemented and HR followed up to make sure the plan was followed, and if it was needed to be revised. In the end, the manager and the team member created a close relationship instead of a situation of a potential long-term sick leave due to stress, the employee resigning, and then additional recruitment costs. Both of them, professionally and personally, developed in this process, and they self-reflected and they recognized their parts of the problem and together reached successful way forwards. So if I was in an interview, I would have added on a little bit more details into this because someone would understand the HR role of this, etc. But it's a simple example where you just follow the STAR model.
So is this a good way to answer the question, tell us about a challenging situation at work and how you handled it, sort of thing?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's
100%.
a really good model to follow in terms of, I mean, I would also recommend to everyone, if you can, try to, I think they even have a list on LinkedIn where it's the most common, like the top 20 interview questions. Something that I did back in the day when I was job searching, and it was so helpful, is I actually wrote down examples of each question, and I really could study it. And I think on the spot, if you try to use the STAR method without actually practicing it, you're really, you might stumble through it. But if you can really reflect when you have the quiet time and strategize, or you could ask somebody for a second opinion, and you can also make sure that you answer in a really concise way. I actually started collecting my answers in a Word document before every interview, especially to make sure that it was relevant to that role or that type of interview. I would read through that list and it would be at the top of my mind. So if they asked any of these very common, typical type of questions, I had a very clear answer. So that's just my extra bonus tip for everyone. Study your answers, write it down, and then you're going to sound, way more put together and organized when it's asked to you.
Yeah, I agree. And you're 100% always going to be asked, tell me about a challenging situation and how you handled it. And maybe prepare 2-3 different ones so you know what you're going back to. And then practice. Mm-hmm. Stand in front of a friend, stand in front of a mirror, read out loud to yourself, because the more you speak to yourself and you verbalize everything, the easier it's going to be for you to then actually take that storytelling from the practice into interview as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think this wraps up the interviewing part of this event. And if you feel you want some extra coaching or prior to a specific interview, don't forget the discount code coaching72. That applies to all of my packages in the next 72 hours.
Yes, and I definitely recommend anyone to go to Caroline, because she gives an extra layer of advice because she's on the Swedish side. So if you really want to get clear on certain questions, she's really great with interview prep, and I sometimes recommend people who come to me to go to her as well. So there's a 72-hour window basically from right now until I believe Saturday at 5 p.m. It's the code coaching72. Again, you can find the link to this directly in the detail section of this event, or you could just message me or her directly on LinkedIn and we'll send it to you. You could even message Caroline first before you book anything. So there is an email address where, let's say you just have some questions first about how does the process work, feel free to send her a message. You don't have to go right into it. We're here to support you and help you, but we just wanted to give you this little extra step to support you guys, because we know that the international professionals, you guys work really hard. I mean, I'm one of you. We work hard. So we just want to see the results happen quickly. But with that being said, I want to move on to another point. I get a lot of messages about this, and I think we got a few questions about this as well in the form. So let's say a really common scenario. You make it through the interview, you think you've done really well, and you're really patiently waiting, but now the recruiter has gone silent and they haven't said anything, and you're wondering, like, okay, what should I do? Should I wait? Should I reach out to them? Should I say thank you? Why do recruiters go silent, and what should be the next step that we take?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit protective of the recruiter here, because in most cases, it's not because of the recruiter. It might have been because of rescheduled interviews with other candidates, holidays, sick leave, the role is being questioned internally, or the hiring manager is just very slow to give feedback. The one thing I would say to the recruiter in this scenario is keep in touch with the candidates, even if you have no news, because I know every single one of you out there would appreciate to hear, hi, thank you so much for the first interview. We haven't finished the round. We're hoping to do this next week, and we're going to get back to you. Every single one here. And if you agree with me, you can just give me a heart. We would rather get that type of message than absolutely nothing at all.
A lot of hearts.
Yes.
Yep.
So beside of those reasons that I just talked about, sometimes it's frankly because you're a good candidate, but you may not be top 2. So they want to move ahead with top 2, but they kind of want to keep you on the backup list because you're not a bad candidate, but they might have someone else that's their preference. And they don't want to reject you because they want you there, because you never know what will happen to the top 2 candidates if they find another job, or if they reject the salary, or anything else. I would say that if they're interested in moving on with you as top 2-3 candidates out of the first round, you should hear from the recruiter within 2 weeks. In rare occasions, it can be longer, but then it will likely be due to some kind of leave that the recruiter will inform you about. So that might be because someone is on holiday, or because someone has gone sick, and then the recruitment process is paused. But if you're top 2-3 candidates, you will hear something within those 2 weeks. So if let's say you're not that top 2-3 candidates, but you may be on the backup list, what can you do as a candidate? I would personally not reach out within 8 to 10 days, but after that, send a positive message to the recruiter and to say, for example, hi Caroline, I hope you're well. Just wanted to thank you for a very nice first conversation. Would be excited to know more about the company. I'm hoping to hear from you soon. And then that's all. I would be very careful about questioning when you can get any feedback. And only do this if you're actually in another process, but you're still very interested in the role to the recruiter that you're reaching out to. And then you should explain to the recruiter that very interested in this position, but I'm also in another process that I don't want to miss out on in case I'm not one of your top candidates. And I mentioned to you earlier today, Amanda, that I got a really nice message on my email today. I'm not a recruiter anymore, and this particular position that someone reached out to me for was in the US, and I'm not very much involved in the US. I had to send them further to that team, but the candidate said, upon applying for the junior technical compliance specialist, I felt a strong alignment between my skills in the technical compliance and product management, and the needs of your team. The person then went on to say, as a cybersecurity analyst with experience at company, I have successfully implemented intrusion prevention systems and data loss prevention protocols reducing security breaches by 50%, and safeguarding millions of customer records. So he's kind of sending me a mini personal letter, and I just found it super nice. The person is asking for a call. Now, I was not the right person, but if I was the recruiter in this, I would definitely go back to look at this name in the recruiting system.
So mini personal letter in the follow-up. It is very catchy. It is very catchy to say, well, just a reminder, this is what I did. This is what I'm capable of doing for you. I, decreased the risk by 50% and so on. That's like, 2 to 3 sentences on top of, hey, I'm just following up on this. It basically makes you memorable, and it brings attention to you, and you can remind them to give you an update and so on. So I like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. With that being said, I thought that we would start with the pre-submitted questions and then finally opening up the floor for everyone that has questions on the call as well. So I'm going to dive right into the recruitment process. And we haven't talked about what a normal recruitment process looks like. And of course, it varies from company to company, etc. But I would say that typically you have a first call with the responsible recruiter. That's about 30 minutes. You move on to an interview with a hiring manager. And then normally you have a third interview with either a more senior manager or someone from the team where you're going to work. This depends on the size of the company and also the culture of the company. Somewhere in between the interview with the recruiter and hiring manager, or after the hiring manager interview, there could be some kind of home assignment or any other type of test.
I think we lost you again. Sorry. I think you're gonna have to, whatever you do, say something. Yeah, I think when it disconnects, she has to restart something. I think it's back on. I think I hear you. Yeah. Sorry guys, she can hear me, but we're waiting to hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Boom.
Good old technology.
This is challenging, but we'll get there.
Yes.
How far did I get, and where did you leave me?
Take home some kind of test or home assignment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or sometimes that's replaced by a longer, more in-depth interview where you're kind of being more questioned in an interview instead. If you're interviewing with a large and global organization, and maybe you will shoot me down now, Amanda, but in my experience, American companies have a longer recruitment process, and it could be up to 5 to 6 interviews, at least the companies that I have had experience from. But maybe that's not always true. After interviews, you'd normally get an offer pending references. And in Sweden, references is a short phone call or a phone interview with someone that you've worked with, and preferably at least one manager. And this whole process can take everything from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on how many interviews, the home assignment time, if there's any holidays, timing with multiple candidates, etc. But after 3 months, it should definitely be coming to an end. We've had a question about educational background and how recruiters are looking at this. I haven't experienced many issues in Sweden unless your profession is very specific, like finance, legal, doctors with a certain a certification to work in Sweden. It's obviously something you can learn, but there's an addition of being able to interpret local rules and legislation in Swedish in those roles as well. And if it's a local company and you only have 1 or 2 positions in the field, the requirement of knowing the language or have that specific Swedish education might be more of a requirement for those companies. But if you go to a larger organization and you can learn the Swedish legislation and then adapt into that and learn along the way, then I don't see that there's much issue. If you have, a bachelor in communications, that should be able to be applied to Swedish companies as well, even if it's not taken here in the country. And the same applied to the Swedish language. Some roles will require it, whilst others won't. If you're a legal counsel and you're going to court, the whole court hearing will be held in Swedish, and then naturally you need to understand the language, whilst if you're in communications in an international company and you're not only working with the Swedish market, then it might not be so necessary. So it's going to be very individual down to the company. Another question is rejections and why you might get a rejection very quickly, even if your profile matches the requirements. And there might be a few reasons for this. I have done this a couple of times myself, so my apologies to all of those candidates. But some roles are only advertised to follow the rules of visa requirements. So this applies to both external candidates and internal promotions, depending on the circumstances of the current visa. And sometimes it might be that they are already far along in the process and they won't meet any other candidates. If they're very, very close to offering someone else the job, they might be quicker to reject you. Or they've had an internal application that they didn't expect, and then they will just go for that. So that's just a few examples. There might be more reasons. Some people have asked about salary progression and what that looks like in Sweden, because they have heard it's not very good. And I will say Sweden's not unique here, but yes, your salary development would be stagnated once you go into a role, unless you get promoted or you change company sooner or later. Depending on your role and industry, you can count about maybe 2 to 3% on an annual basis, no matter the inflation. Most companies won't account for inflation when they are having salary reviews. And if you're a high performer and doing really well, maybe up to 5-6%, but anything on top of that is really, really, really exceptional. If you compare that to getting a promotion or changing a job, I have always targeted 15 to 20% of an increase, and that might be for a similar role. And if I'm then moving, if I've applied for a manager position or anything else, of course I want a little bit more for that extra responsibility. So if you compare this, let's say you even go down to 10%, if you get a promotion, it will still take you 4 or 5 years to get 10% extra of just salary reviews instead of getting a promotion. So when you enter a job, just make sure to negotiate a salary that you're happy with, and then rather target opportunities of like training and development budgets, etc., because that's also going to help you to say, I now have more qualifications, etc., if you want to try and raise your salary a bit more. But yeah, there's usually not much more to hope for the standard increases. And then finally, of course, we want to give you sufficient time to ask your questions, but we've had this questions about consequences and where the consequences should lie in regarding to negative outcomes in the labor market of Swedish companies
not hiring international talent, if that should lie with the government, with the businesses, or other institutions. And I was sitting and thinking about this for a long time, and I thought about it really hard. And I was then thinking, in some way, companies are already paying a price for being narrow-minded. They are already putting themselves in a consequence of not hiring talent that they could hire because of a language or something else. So that is a consequence. Let's take the kommuner in Sweden. They will have a hard time hiring, let's say, a software engineer when their whole code base and documentation is in Swedish. They're automatically ruling out everyone that doesn't speak the language, even if they could have brilliant talent coming on board. If you look at the governmental institutions, I think there should be more consequences, because it's in all of our interests to get as many people working as possible. Because the more people that are working, they will not only contribute with tax money to our society, but they will also get a sense of belonging. They will make new friends. They will maybe find new hobbies, etc., etc. But if we look at only the monetary part of this, outside of the soft values, if we're more people contributing with tax money to our country, we will get better schools, we'll get better healthcare, we'll get better social security overall. So it should be in our best interest to create better circumstances for the governmental institution to hire international talent. When it comes to private companies, there's a private people or other companies that are investing their own money, and they should have the freedom to build the company that they believe will be the most successful. But in my experience, it's also those companies that are more open-minded to international talent. And I think overall, both in HR, in businesses, in governments, etc., more education is needed. HR and companies need to step out of their comfort zone and just learn what international talents can bring to the table, instead of just like, oh no, we need this requirement, and they're completely closing down. And I know you have educated a bit more around this, Amanda. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it was the person who asked this question. I think a lot of people are starting to ask this question. A lot of internationals ask this question, but I think that there are some people in Sweden, such as yourself, who really see the value in international talent. And I can say that I get quite a few clients, and they're usually, interestingly, more so on the government side than on the private business side. And I believe it's because private businesses and companies, I think they do have more flexibility in some ways to decide who they want to work with. And I think a lot of them are working with international clients. But I think on the government side, they're starting to realize that they need to sort of lead by example. And I can tell you that they're feeling the what I put in quotations, the talent shortage. I mean, if you look at the numbers, there's not really a shortage of people who need jobs who are qualified. It's really a matter of trying to align, let's say, those who are doing the hiring, whether it's on a government level, whether it's on a private company level, with the talent that's already existing out there. And so, I mean, I don't want to go into crazy detail about this now because I really want to open this up for other people. But I would just say this. I think this would be a great topic in itself, just to have a 1 hour LinkedIn live just on this topic alone, because it's something that's starting to come up. It's bubbling up to the surface. I'm personally seeing that there's more interest from on the commune level, on the government level, more so even than the private company level. So that tells you that there's actually a problem that needs to be solved. And I think I read an article the other day that the government is putting, I could be wrong with this, but I believe it was like 25 million SEK or something, or 225. I have to actually find the article to know for sure, but they're putting a lot of funding this year into solving this. So I think we're maybe starting to turn a corner in terms of there being more awareness and people being more solution oriented. And I think they're starting to see that international talent is really needed to keep putting money back into the economy, so to speak. But with that, I'll leave the topic there because I don't want to carry on. And I do think we should open this up now for other people to start asking questions. So if you want to ask a question, join the queue now and we'll go through it in consecutive order. But are you ready to start taking some questions?
Yeah, I'm ready. Please be nice, everyone.
I think they'll be nice, but we'll start with Mary. I think she's been waiting here for a while. So 1 second, let me put, there you are.
Hi Amanda, hi Caroline.
Hi.
Hope you're having a great day. I'll just be very quick on my question. So how should I, as a job applicant, adapt my resume? Should it be more like human readable, or should it be optimized for ATS? And if it should be optimized for ATS, do you have any specific tools that you can recommend for us that we can see if our resume is ATS friendly or not?
Oh, this is very technical questions. I should have had my friends from Team Taylor here with me. I think that some companies will apply that if you don't tick certain buzzwords, etc., they will rule you out. I know this was a big thing like a few years ago. Essentially, if you make it to that you are meeting those qualifications, there will always be a human reading your resume. So what you can do, and what I still recommend, is that if you look at the very top of the skills and requirements that they're looking for, make sure that maybe get in a couple of those buzzwords if you want to be 100% sure. But I don't generally recommend anyone tailoring their CV to a specific role, but rather it's like, make sure you present yourself well enough in that CV so you can apply for multiple jobs within the same kind of category, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
understood.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that, that I think in the end, I mean, I agree with you, Caroline, that like there's always going to be a human that you're talking to. The ATS just kind of maybe helps you get to the human. I think that the best way is to just make sure it's more readable for the person who's going to see it. But on the other hand, I don't think you'll ever really go wrong if you get good at adding in keywords, because it also appeases the ATS system. Keywords plus human, the magic formula.
Great, got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so let's take the next one, Anna Malai. I recognize this name and this face. Let's see what question we have. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back.
Every time. Great to see you.
Yes, I have something to ask. Yes. Caroline, thanks a lot for this talk.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and there's just one. I have two questions, by the way. The first question is like, because if you're experienced people and if you have experience in Nordic way of working, then you get the job easily, is my understanding. But for someone who comes from outside the EU, for example, my wife is a good example, because I can get a job easily because I have the Nordic experience. If someone comes from outside the EU and who has an Indian education and let's say an Indian degree and Indian work experience, the problem what the people face is the trust. The Swedish employer don't trust the resume or they don't trust the education or the job experience, and that leads to a lot of rejections in the job and these kinds of things, which has been our experience. Then the only way to solve this was via which we had was Jobsprongat, and you go for an internship for 3 months where they see the people, then they believe my wife can work, and then she got the job. But what is the solution for this? Is only Jobsprongat or internship is the solution for this problem, or do you see a solution for this?
It's a good question. I mean, I've been spoiled working in companies where we have relocated from India, Vietnam, Iran, I don't know, all over the world. We have tended to do tests. So I get really sad when I hear that people don't trust education or people don't trust your experience, etc. We should be able to trust that. Some kind of internships are always good. Amanda, you've been talking a lot about portfolios, if you can show. So if you're a developer, etc., do you have a GitHub? If you're a designer, do you have any designs that you can submit to your application or send across to a recruiter on LinkedIn, etc.? I think it's about finding those ways around and showing a little bit of your hands-on work to also stick out from the crowd, if that makes sense. And then I think it's bad that you need to come into an internship and then get a job. But if you can try and show beforehand what you've done so someone can actually evaluate it, I hope that would help.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity lacks because from my experience, when we try to apply, you get an instant rejection from probably the automatic system, or we are not sure. So there's never been a contact where you can show your skills. That has been the issue.
Yeah, if you can try and identify the hiring manager and because there is normally like a contact person stated in the job advert, send an email to that person, get the portfolio across. And sometimes it's you're allowed to tell a white lie. So for example, hey, I applied for this job. I forgot to send in my GitHub, or I wasn't able to attach my portfolio. So I just want to send it across to you here, or would you like to forward it to the hiring manager? Take those small ways around and then see if you get more attention from that.
Yeah, got that point. Yes, and my second question is about this. I'm not sure if it is the right platform to ask, but yeah, I mean there are layoffs which are going on in Sweden, which everyone knows about it. In some company that happens, but then each company has a different way of giving packages, 3 months, 6 months, and someone does this. Is there any Swedish rule by law or regulation that when layoff happens, it's mandated to give a 3 months package? Or there is no rules regarding this?
There are rules. Everyone is obliged to offer you the minimum notice period. And if you have a notice period stated in your contract, then that's what they have to offer you. If you don't have a notice period in your contract and you go into the Employment Protection Act called LAS in Sweden, then your notice period increases with your length of service, and then that is what the notice period applies, and that's everything from 1 month and then going higher. If your notice period due to length of service is longer in LAS than in your contract, then you need to get that. So it can be as low as 1 month.
Okay, then it's just the notice period. There is no package, because then it's companies voluntary to give 3 months or 6 months. It depends upon the company. Then there is no regulation of that.
Exactly. So if the company offers you more than what they have to, there is no set packages, then that's just a courtesy of the company. And sometimes they go out before and they ask for voluntary redundancies as well. So If there are people that have been thinking about leaving and they want to give you 6 months, maybe that's the time for them to then accept that offer because it gives you 6 months rather than 3. Maybe more people would be inclined to go, but that's then normally like a voluntary redundancy and not when you're actively pushed out.
Yeah, got it. And just the last final question what I have is, based on my working profile in Sweden and let's say Norway, I mean, I have never met the HR in the process. It's always you get the recruiter and the manager who interviews, and just I see the HR signature on the document. What does the HR does to the company in Sweden? Just to know.
I can talk about this for ages. Shoot me a message offline and we can talk more about it. I'm mindful we only have about 10-15 minutes left, so I also want to let the other people in on the floor. But send me a message and I will elaborate on that one. Or Amanda, we can have a second LinkedIn event where we talk about more what does HR do.
Yeah, sure, done. Why not? Thanks a lot, Sven.
Thank you.
And I just want to add, Caroline does offer a service where you can help people if they're facing a layoff, which, by the way, if you're ever I've been through 2 layoffs myself. Never sign a document on the same day, and definitely try to get some kind of advice, whether it's from your union or you need to talk to a professional who can guide you to make sure that you're actually being given the right negotiation terms and so on. But Caroline recently had a client that she helped with negotiating a termination. So if you're potentially facing that kind of situation, make sure you pause. And if you need to find help, yeah, there's always a union or Caroline. So just wanted to let you guys know. But we'll bring the next person in, Sharmila. Welcome, Sharmila. Sharmila, you're in the box.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Hey. Okay, I have a question. In Sweden, are there any parameters recruiter use to compare candidate education equivalency with Sweden's benchmark?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
My question is that in Sweden, do recruiters use any parameters to compare candidate education equivalency with Sweden's benchmarks?
I think that for certain professions, you need some kind of Swedish or European standard of education. I know this is common in healthcare, etc. But when it comes to like software engineering, communications, marketings, they will just see what type of education you have, and then they would ask you about details in this education if needed. But if you look at software engineering, for example, they're similar all over the world, and you kind of knows what you get. And then they might ask you if you had a specific like focus in your education and stuff like that. So this is entirely down to what profession you're in.
What about banking? Any idea about that?
I know banking has very, very, very strict rules when it comes to money laundering and stuff like that. When it comes to education, I mean, you have everything from customer service roles to traders and etc. I would hardly think that they're benchmarking education for entry-level roles. If you have anything like specific in your role and in your profession, just send me a message and I'm happy to elaborate for you on that, because it gets easier than just speaking broadly as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the next question. Joan, who I recognize. Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes, I guess
Yes.
I can see green on my PowerPoint. So yes. Thanks, Amanda and Caroline, for the event and for all these tips. My question is related to what was discussed last about maybe companies not recruiting or not hiring enough internationals. So I've been in Sweden for 3 years now, and every time when you do research, when you talk to other professionals, the advice or the statement that I always get is that if you are not referred by someone who works for the company, it's very hard, to get hired or even to get noticed. How much would you agree with this statement?
I wouldn't necessarily agree for the international companies or the companies that do have international talent. For smaller companies, yes. For companies that are very Swedish centric, yes. It's always easier to get an interview if you're referred, 100%, but it's not the determining factor if you're going to be offered the role or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Okay, next we have Madison.
Hi, thank you to you both. I just have a very basic question, but I've had conflicting advice in the past. So on your CV, is it expected or recommended to have a photo or no photos at all for Sweden?
Oh, I think your mic went out again, Caroline. I know. Sorry, everyone. She's going to answer in just a second. I think there's these technical things. I mean, I can start trying to answer that while she's getting everything set up. Personally, I kind of tell people that I'll probably give you a little bit more conflicting advice, because I personally feel that it helps to have a photo. But I've also heard people say that it's better not to. Are you back?
Yeah, I think I'm back.
Okay. What is your opinion on it, on the photo?
I actually agree with you, Amanda. I don't think there's a straightforward answer here. Sometimes it works with a photo. If I don't see a photo, it's not a deal breaker. I guess you get an impression of who you have in front of you if you have a photo, but that should in no shape, way, or form be any determining factor if you are qualified for a job or not. So, have I ever rejected someone based on a photo? No. Have I ever rejected someone because they do not have a photo? No. It's a really tricky one. I'm sorry, I cannot give you a better answer than this.
No, that's totally okay. Thank you so much.
I mean, I personally, I'm on the side of including a photo because it helps you to connect with who they are. You can remember them a little bit more. And if you have your LinkedIn on there, they're going to see your photo anyways if they click the LinkedIn link. So I usually recommend people to use the photos. But I did see a recent statistic. I don't know if it was just in Sweden. It could have been the US or worldwide. So I will admit, I need to research this a bit more. But I was really surprised to see a statistic that CVs that didn't include a photo performed better. So my personal preference is a photo, but the statistics show that without a photo performed better. I'll see if I can find that statistic. I think I remember where it was on a website, and maybe get back to you guys. Okay, we have the next.
Yeah, interesting.
Question. We have the next. Ioana.
Thank you so much for this event and for all the advice. My question would be that I'm an architect and I have experience. I'm from Romania, which is also from the European Union, and all my experience is in Romania. I have brief experience in Spain and in Ireland, and I moved to Sweden because I want to be close to my family. And in this process, it's starting to get a little difficult to understand because I have different kind of responses depending on a larger company or a smaller one, and trying to find something that I can relate to. And I was wondering if do you have any advice for me, or I was thinking of trying to get some kind of internship. I know the internships here are more for students, but something that will help me understand learn the language in a professional way, but also understand the local legislation and the way they work here. Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, I was gonna tie this answer a little bit into the previous question that we had about that it's easier to get an interview if you're being referred. Just try and see if you can find meetups. I know there is companies that are holding talking events just like we are doing now, but at their offices, etc. Which it will be an open invitation. As well, so you can always try and find those types of events that speaks to you. Maybe it doesn't 100% match, but it matches a little bit, and then you get to go in there, you get to speak to current employees, you get to speak to their current HR, etc., and then you can just keep in contact for future opportunities. The second thing is try to look for job ads that's in English. If there is a job ad in Swedish, they're most likely looking for a Swedish speaking person, no matter if it's an actual requirement or not. And I actually don't know how to give advice on this, because the larger companies are normally exposed to international talent, and they might have talent all over the world in multiple locations across Europe, etc. And then English will be the natural language anyway. But also the smaller private companies, they just want the right person, and they're also very...
Sorry, your sound. Sorry to inform you. We'll just give her a minute to get caught up.
Sure. Thank you.
I think she's coming back in just a second. Just another minute. Yeah, I mean, I could give you a little bit of advice. I always recommend networking, just because you never know what kind of opportunities you can find. And I don't really like the word internship, but if you really need to, I would say even three months of volunteering for something, like for example, are you back, Caroline?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay, sorry. Do you want to pick up?
No, it's fine. Continue, because okay. I like where you're going.
Yeah. Okay. I was just gonna say, like for example, I was just at the PMI conference for the last 2 days, and it's largely run by volunteers, but it's a very credible organization. They have over 500,000 or 600,000 members worldwide, and people can. I think the word volunteer, especially if it's something that's done in a sort of an acceptable way where you can sort of retain your dignity, so to speak. rather than an intern and having to start from the bottom if you already have a lot of experience. Just doing these sorts of things, having 3 months of that experience, especially with a company or organization in Sweden, will get you ahead so much further and faster than if you just keep trying to get in to the Swedish job market without having that experience. And I know it's so controversial. Like, some people are so against unpaid work and internships. Look, I'm not here to even say whether that is right or wrong. I think that's a personal decision, but I can say this. I started out with an unpaid internship in Sweden, and when I got my very next job, it was mid-senior level position with a very reasonable pay just because of that work that I did, versus, trying for an extended period of time. So if you can find some kind of way just to get into the Swedish workforce, even if it's like volunteering for a quarter or a season at, let's say, PMI, for example, or some other organization, like a professional organization, it will help you immensely to be more recognized. So I hope that kind of answers it a bit. What do you think?
I actually started to think of something similar, but I'm not really sure how should I approach the manager or I don't know, whoever they have in the firm in offering the volunteer, but I'm not really sure if from their part they are agreeing with this. They are going to see it like I'm an intruder or something like that. I just want to learn. Obviously, that's my point of working for a short period of time without necessarily being paid, or maybe just a little to get by. But I want to learn and continue my career, and I'm not really sure how to approach this situation in an email, or how to speak about it when I'm applying if I don't know anyone there.
I'm just happy to suggest a few wordings to you. If you drop me a message, let's have a look at it and see if we find something that feels at least a little bit comfortable for you and not as an intruder.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just want to mention to everyone that we will stay on for a little while longer. We still have 6 hands up. So we're going to stay on to take those questions.
All right, let's continue with the next. Tusa?
Hello, Amanda and Caroline. My question is regarding a proactive outreach approach to a recruiter. I would like to know your thoughts about reaching out proactively to a recruiter. Imagine that I'm interested to work in IKEA, and what do you think if I proactively send a message to a recruiter and shows my interest?
Would this be for a specific role or just for IKEA in general?
No, just in general.
My experience is that that's very much timing. The recruiters are focused on specific roles. They will obviously build up candidate databases, but I don't think it's always that they go back and look into those databases. Then you need some kind of personal relationship, or you've met them at some kind of event and you can refer back to that, so you can be at the back of their head. But if you just send a message to network, you're then going to go to the bottom of the LinkedIn messages or the email inbox, and you're going to be sat in the candidate database, and they're going to get applicants to every single role that they roll out. Maybe it's not the answer that you were hoping for, but that's very much down to timing. If they have a role there and then that they could match you to, otherwise I think it would just disappear out later on. I would then rather try and, as we talked about earlier, go to one of their events and try to network with them in person, so you can make that impression.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
I was also going to add networking. I mean, if you think about it, the recruiter is really just a pathway to the hiring manager. They're usually the ones who make the final decision. So I would focus a lot more on the networking aspect, which, if anyone is curious, I have a free networking webinar on my website, intertalentsinSweden.com, or just send me a message privately. Go to the details section of this event. You can find it there, but it'll teach you how you can network with a recruiter before, like let's say you know a recruiter who works within marketing, maybe they don't have your role yet, but if you network with them beforehand and let them know, hey, I'm looking for this, they'll be coming to you instead of you coming to them. So hopefully that helps. Should we move to the next? I'll go to Simon. These are all very good questions, by the way. All right, Simon.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for this webinar.
Sure.
Yeah, my question is about a layoff case where the person who was laid off, he signed the contract that they give him because they said either you take this or you will be not offered, for example, termination period or so. So is it the right thing that he did or not?
I'm not going to give advice on such a specific case without sufficient details. That doesn't give a fair representation on the legislation, etc. And I need to understand more to even be able to give you sufficient advice. Send me a message. I can have a quick glance at it. But if you want me to look at deeper into it, then that would require a little bit more time. But I can still have a look a little bit at the more details. But it's too short to do in this type of event, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say, though, that you should never sign an agreement on some kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but, feeling pressured into doing it. Just get a second counsel at the minimum. That, I think, is a very, generic, basic advice we can give. Take a pause. You don't need to sign it that day, even if they tell you, oh, well, if you do this, then that, or, this is this, whatever kind of pressure.
But the case that I know, it has been, forced to leave his old belongings in the same meetings.
I would say in any of those situations, you should find someone who sort of knows the law, like the union or a consultant, someone, and take at least a couple days or up to a week.
Mm-hmm.
I would know when I was laid off. Yes.
The union was representing the union, and they also said you should sign this.
Well, I mean, in that case, I agree with Caroline. I mean, it's really hard to give specific advice on this situation, but on a more general type of advice, if you get advisement and they tell you that, I mean, it may very well be that. I'm just recommending that. I know cases where people really did sign it that day on the spot because they're caught off guard. Don't ever do that. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but they say leave all the belongings. So should he do that, or he should not listen when they say that?
You mean leave his belongings and leave immediately without
all
getting?
the company belongings like laptop, mobile, card, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many details when it comes to laying people off or terminating people's contracts, etc. I don't like to sit and speculate like this without looking at the case and understanding the details behind and reasons behind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Bree.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am in the U.S., hoping to move to Sweden in the next few years here. And in the US, informational interviews are common, where somebody asks to speak with a person who either has a job they're interested in or works for a company that they're interested in, not specifically for a job. Are these common and or welcome in Sweden?
I think you have to repeat that for me because I need to follow this. This seems new to me.
Sure. So an informational interview is talking to somebody about the work that they do, about the company that they work for, asking questions like, how did you get into this role? What education do you have? What's a typical day like? Or also learning things like, what's your hiring process like? Is it helpful for me to do this, that, or the other thing? But not specifically talking to somebody who's necessarily a hiring manager or even has a job open, just information gathering. It's something that often recent college grads do, or people who are making career transitions into a new field might do, just to make those connections and gather that information.
I haven't heard that this is a very common concept in Sweden, but obviously we have fairs, like job fairs, both for universities and in general when they are. So let's say, for example, you have an industry fair and then you have lots of companies in that industry and people are just networking. And then, of course, you could do this type of intro and then connect with them afterwards. And that would lead to more of an informal interview that way. But I haven't heard that it's structured specifically like you have said here. But yeah, I think it would happen through fairs or... Well, if you go to the unemployment agency, they would have collaborations, but then they really want you to take a job and it's not an interview that way round. But yeah, I think that's the way that I could connect it to, but it's not as structured as you explained to me here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the same thing, that I don't think we have like an official informational type of interview, but what you can do is network with someone for a fika, so to speak, and sort of ask them in that way. It's just, you need to approach a recruiter in a certain kind of a way, which we discussed. But let's take the next question. Okay. John.
Look, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, great, thank you. Just wanted to go back actually to the internship question and whether that's worth it. So I worked in Sweden for 2 years with a Swedish company, and the market, however, was targeted towards the US, so we had no actual business done in Sweden. Would that still consider me going into the Swedish market, or is it kind of not really count because we were doing business mostly or all in whole in the US, even though we are operating out of Sweden?
No, I would leverage this as you have experience from a Swedish company and work towards several markets.
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, okay, well, I've been struggling finding a job, and so maybe should I even try something like Jobbsprånget and see if that's maybe easier to do. But then I'm like, well, I worked here for 2 years, so it's like, why would I go try to do an internship when I already had work experience here?
Yeah, no, it's like if you're not mentioning Sweden in any other capacity than that you have been employed here, try and tweak that a little bit more to adjust it to the Swedish market as well, because I'm sure you've had some kind of exposure to that, and then leverage that you have worked in an international role to other markets from here. And hopefully that would give you a new perspective as well and catch some attention.
Right. Okay. And sorry, I had another quick question. So
sure.
How often is it that CEOs make final decisions, considering they maybe only met once with the candidate? And so, because this is a problem I had recently, I got to the final stage, and I actually sent Amanda this information regarding me, but I got to the final stage of the recruiting process, and which was meeting with the CEO, and he was the one that made the final decision of whether it got hired or not, even though the sales manager had liked me and even mentioned that, and it was due to the sales manager that I got to the final stage in the first place. But at the end I didn't get hired because the CEO, for whatever reason, thought he didn't get to know me well. And so I think it's kind of, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that happened and why, and what exactly I did so wrong that I didn't end up getting hired in the first place, considering everyone else that I dealt with throughout the recruitment process liked me and told me so. So
what was the size of this company, if I may ask?
About 200 employees. They have a few offices internationally, but they're headquartered in Malmö.
Oh, okay. I would say it's fairly unusual. I've worked in medium-sized companies with like 100, and then the CEO would be there, and he would have a strong opinion sometimes. If it's a small company, I would say it's more common because you're maybe like a smaller group, and they really want them to get along, and it might be a culture question, etc. I'm a bit surprised that there were about 200 people. I haven't heard, but yeah, still that other company that I worked for, we were 150, and then the CEO would still be involved. Final decision, they're always involved somehow to sign off on the budget of salaries and stuff like that, but say yes or no on a candidate.
Right, and why wouldn't they set that up as to have the CEO, if he's the one that actually makes the final decision, why wouldn't they set him up as the first person for the candidate to have an interview with, so that way the CEO can then set expectations and guidelines for the rest of the people involved in the recruitment process to follow based on the type of candidate that the CEO is trying to have hired?
Good question. You might have been 2 or 3 people instead of 10 that they have talked to, and then the CEO picks from those 2 or 3, and that's the reason he's lost.
Yeah, because the way I got the rejection, it sounded like there was actually no other option, like no other candidates available, so they had to start the whole process from the beginning, which was very odd. Yeah, because like I said, the sales manager liked me, and the rejection he gave me was particularly, I like you and I got you this far, but the CEO made the final decision, and he wants to keep looking. So it wasn't like he said, we found another candidate that is aligns with us better and has more experience, because that could have been that. I feel like that I would have been more sure of myself, of like, okay, well, I tried, I got this far, but they found someone else that has more experience. But he didn't even mention anything close to that. So,
did you get any type of details of why he didn't find you suitable, and if there was anything that you could clarify to them?
Yeah, I tried. So I guess what the decision was made based off of the CEO not having a feeling that he got to know me well enough, which is also quite a strange answer, considering you can't really know someone based off of one meeting. And the person that I got to know the most was the sales manager who was involved the most within the recruitment process. And as I mentioned, he liked me and took me all the way to the final stage. And so I think he was also disappointed that the CEO didn't, for whatever reason, didn't continue.
Okay. I'm happy to chat a bit further about this because I find this very, very interesting. I'm very sorry for the experience, but it's an interesting take to hear all of those stories from the other side as well, because that's not like a great experience to walk out with that type of feedback as well. And then just send me a message and we'll see if we can follow up with another conversation, because I'm curious to know more here.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. I'm just mindful we have 3 more left, and I want to give them the opportunity to ask their questions before we close off for tonight.
Sure. Let's take the next one. I think after these three, we'll go ahead and call it a night. It's getting a bit late.
Yes, we will.
But we have the next question. Savita. Hi, Savita. You're in the box. Oh, she just.
She dialed out.
We'll take the next one, Seema.
Is it me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for great inputs, Amanda and Caroline. A great job.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I have around 13 plus years of experience, of which 7 years is in Sweden. Right now, I am feeling like taking a break for a couple of months or perhaps for 6 months. But also, I'm quite afraid, to be frank, looking at the current job market. So my question is, does being employed or not being employed or having a gap of few months lower my desirability in the job market? Does it lower the chances of getting the interviews?
No, I would say if you're making a conscious choice that you want to have time off, or you're doing a career break, or you're doing anything else, put that into the CV as an own type of employment thing. Career break or time off. I mean, I know people put in parental leave when they go on parental leave on their CV so they can follow the timeline. I think that's more important, that if you do have a gap of a couple of years, what did you do in those 2 years? Because I'm 100% sure that you've done something and not been sat home in your sofa eating crisps all day.
Yeah.
So just complete the timeline in your resume, and if you want to take 6 months off, I know when I went backpacking after I had started working, I just put in, I was out traveling for 6 months, and now I'm Swedish as well, but fill the gap and then take the career break if you want to do that.
Yeah, great, thank you. But also the question is also like, usually the ones who takes the gap here will be like, I don't know the particular words. For example, like they want to study, or they want to switch their, or for the career transitioning, or else like for parental, the company will give them the break. But mine will not be that case. So it will be a bit unusual if I leave my job and then take a break. So that's why I'm a bit skeptical there. So.
No, to me it doesn't matter. If you've had a break, then you've had a break. I mean, normally if you take a break and go back to the same job, so let's say you're on a leave of absence, you wouldn't see that in the CV because you're officially still employed throughout that time. So you wouldn't really have to disclose it in your CV. So if you're taking a career break and it's still on your accord, I personally do not see that as an issue. If you just say, I took some time off because I needed it, or I went traveling, or whatever, as long as you have a reason for it. If you go to an interview later on and say, no, I didn't want to work anymore, and no, I didn't do anything special, etc., then that will maybe come across as you're not motivated, or you don't know what you want with your career, etc. But if you have a reason for what you're doing, etc., then I don't see it as an issue.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
I think we'll take one final question, and that's from Alex when we made the final call before. Horacio and Savita, please feel free to reach out to us on private message and we will answer your questions. But let's take the final one from Alex.
Hi, Alex. You're in the box.
Yeah, I've just found the mute button. Thanks for the question and letting me close out. This will be super quick, hopefully, to answer. three-part, really fast, yes, no's, rolling back the clock a bit to the CV portion of the webinar. Include a personal number, yes or no?
No.
No, okay. And
do you know why? Your personal number is your identification number that anyone then can use to take a private loan in your name, to check anything about you, etc. Birth date, fine, not needed. No one needs to know how old you are. Personal number, absolutely not. That's a very personal identification number that you should only keep to yourself, because they can use that to your bank ID and whatever.
No, I'm familiar with the things that can be done with it, but it needs the second factor authentication. And technically, if I contact Skelteverket with a good reason, I could get anyone's personal number if I ask. It's technically open. But okay, I thought the question for that, because sometimes with a foreign name, foreign background, for people who are actually resident in Sweden and don't require employment sponsorships or visas, I thought that would have been a way to sort of like, oh yeah, no, he's actually easy. So thank you for the answer, though. I'll think about removing it off my CV.
No, I would rather state that you have a permanent residency, or you have citizenship, or whatever permit or visa or citizenship that you're here on. So, but no personal numbers. Just put on the visa status in that case.
Awesome, easy answer. Thank you. Second one is I just wanted to. I don't want to re-ask the answer, but I was really shocked by your response on the language level question earlier with the ABC level recognition, because this has nothing to do with SFE or Sweden. It's a European standard. Is this answer you gave based on your own personal views or from conversations that you've had with other recruiters? Because to me, it's a standard that's known worldwide in terms of recognizing language abilities. I've got 5 languages. If I start to detail the levels of each of them with words, that's a huge amount of space on the CV.
I don't agree that it needs to be that long. I do understand. I know that it's a European standard with the gradings of A, B, C, etc. I just don't think it's general knowledge if A or C is the highest. I mean, I couldn't tell you right here, right now. And all I say is that you put English, fluent, Swedish, proficient. It doesn't have to be super long explanation of your proficiency of the language, but there's definitely not going to be everyone that understands even if it's a European standard or a worldwide standard, not everyone is gonna.
Okay.
I think you're your sound again.
I'm here. Okay, but I was just wondering if it was coming from your own personal view or from like conversations that you'd had with other recruiters. But it sounds like anyway, answered. Last one is language presentation of the CV itself. Would you send English version plus Swedish version, settle on just one language, and if one were to send in Swedish, would then the expectation be that you would carry the interview exclusively in Swedish? I mean, I can muddle my way through an interview, but I'm definitely going to make a better impression in English.
Yeah, I think we're still waiting on her to fix her audio technical situation.
I was counting on maybe just her microphone having died and be able to hear that while she logs back in.
Are you back?
Am I back now?
Oh yeah, you are.
No.
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I heard.
You heard the question.
Yes, I heard the question. I just quickly want to go back to the other one to say if it's my personal opinion or if it's based on other impressions of this language thing. That it's going to be a mix how much you've been exposed to it. But if you are a company that accepts English, we are not going to care about your grades in Swedish, for example. Now moving on to the next question of what language. If the advert is in Swedish, I would submit in Swedish and I would prepare myself to speak in Swedish. Then you can say, I express myself a little bit better in English, or if it's a specific question, you can ask, can I answer this question in English? As long as you have showed that you understand and you can also communicate in Swedish. But job advert Swedish, resume Swedish, job advert in English, resume in English.
Thank you for your time and answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're gonna stop the questions here. So if you're waiting in the queue, you can reach out to me or Caroline directly in a private message, and we'll see if we can answer your question. But Caroline, yeah, I just want to thank you for your time today. Very insightful answers. You answered so many questions. I mean, you answered like the first half of just like the common questions, and then the specific form questions, and then our questions here in the live Q&A. So yeah, you've done a really great job of giving us insight. Like, if you guys learned something new that you've always been wanting to ask a recruiter, can you just like put a heart or something so she can see it in the comments? Because you did a lot of work for us and helped us to really understand what happens. Yeah, it's like lighting up. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for tonight, Amanda, and thank you everyone for listening in. And as Amanda said, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us in our DMs. We're here to support you. We're here to interact with you. And if there is anything else you want us to elaborate on that we have talked about tonight, then also reach out. And thank you so much for all of the engagement and all of the questions, and even the tough ones.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And again, one more time, I just have to remind everyone, especially those who might have joined towards the end, if you're not aware, there is a special promotion to get a coaching session with Caroline, where you can get 20% off the coaching package and the prices for the next 72 hours using the promo code coaching72. You can find the link on how to book her in the details section of the event, or you could just message us directly. But it's a really good opportunity to get advice on just Swedish labor law. What are your employee rights if you're already employed? If you need help with career coaching, or maybe you need a CV review, maybe you need interview coaching. I mean, she has so much knowledge here, and you can get this advice for your very specific situation. So and you can just send her an email as well. Maybe you aren't sure if it's right for you, but she will answer some questions you might have. So again, this is for the next 72 hours. Reach out to either one of us, but otherwise you're still welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn, both myself and her, just to say hi, or to share your feedback. We love to hear from you guys. So with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and end this, since we've been at it for 2 hours. So I hope everyone has a good evening, and thank you for attending. We will be putting the recording on YouTube in the next week or so. So if you missed some of it, you can join us there. But thank you, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and say goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.